Hello, today we are going to take a look at how to run LLMs, something like ChatGPT, locally in your computer using something called Open Web UI, which is a web interface. It's all open source and it's going to allow you to use something called Ollama to run these LLMs locally so you don't have to share your data with anyone. But also if you want to use the common ones like OpenAI, like ChatGPT or Grok or any other one, there is also a way to do that, and I'm going to show you how to combine both and even to extend that to a wider universe using OpenRouter. So let's get into it. To follow this video, you need to be familiarized with Docker, which I have a video for that. Check it out in the description of this video, and also with the command line interface. I have a video for that too. Check it out. The first thing we're going to do is to install Ollama. So just go to ollama.com and here you will just follow the instructions for your system. It's very easy to do. Ollama is going to allow us to download and run many models locally in our machine. You can check here in the models that there are tons of them. Some of them are specific for something in particular, have been trained for something in particular. Other ones are more generic. Some of them require a lot of resources from your machine. Some of them are very light and you can just run them easily. It depends on the hardware that you have. Usually the more powerful the computer, the better experience you're going to have with this. I already have Ollama installed in my system, and the first thing you need to do is to pull a model. There are tons of models here that you can check, and we are going to try one called Tiny Llama first, which is a very, very small model that will run on any machine. Basically, even a Raspberry Pi, you can run this one. Ollama pull Tiny Llama. Once you have the model installed, you just do Ollama run and the name of the model. If you don't have the model installed and you use the run command, it will download it automatically for you. Here we can just start interacting with it the same as we used to do with ChatGPT. So for example, why is the sky blue? And it's going to give us an answer, and it's going to be very fast, but the quality of the content returned by such a small model is not comparable with a bigger one like Llama 3 or the models used behind the scene by OpenAI or Grok or any of the other ones. So in this case, it's a tiny one, we can use it locally, but as you can see, using that in the command line is not that friendly. So how can we have this into a more integrated environment and having a chat? But for that, we're going to use Open Web UI. This is an open source project, which is very cool and allows you to run all these models in a very nice kind of chat interface. To get this easily up and running in our machine, I'm going to use Docker Compose. And the content of this Docker Compose file is going to be in the description of this video. You can find a link to my blog, and there I'm going to have always information for every video. There's going to be a blog post giving you all the resources that you need. The file we have here is Docker Compose YAML file. Let's open it with Vim. And the content is a very basic, simple Docker Compose file, which is going to just get the latest version of Open Web UI. It's going to open the port 3000, your local machine, and internally the 8080. And just that, basically a simple Docker Compose file. So in order to run this, we do Docker Compose app and Option D, so it runs in the background. If we check in Docker, we have here our container running on Open Web UI. Now let's take a look and open it locally. So we're opening localhost 3000, the port, and here we are. Just click here to get started. And it's going to ask you to create an admin account for the first time. Just put an email and a password. It's local in your machine. You don't have to be extra secure. If you're going to do that in a machine that is shared, then yeah, but in this case, just something simple. Create admin account, and here we are. Why is the sky blue? And look at this, this is so cool. So basically it's using the Tiny Llama model that we just downloaded. It's using Ollama that is installed in our machine and is listening. Ollama is a server that is running in your machine and is listening. And Open Web UI basically interface connects to it. And here you can click and you have all the models that in this case are downloaded in my machine. In yours it's going to be different. You can download as many models as you like. Let's create a new chat, and here we're going to use Tiny Llama, for example, and I can add a model as well, and let's use Llama 3.2, which is a much better model than Tiny Llama. And let's ask the same question. Why is the sky blue? and we can have them running side by side to each other. As you can see here, Tiny Llama already gave me the answer because it's a very tiny model. It's small, doesn't require that many resources, so this computer is able to provide the response very quickly. Llama 3.2 requires more resources. It's taking a little bit longer to think and also to produce the output, but as you can see, the output is a lot much better than the first one. It's all formatted, it has more information here, it gives you more stuff to work with. So this is something important to take into account. Depending on what you're doing, you might use a small model, a bigger model, but take into consideration the fact of the hardware. If you have a powerful machine, just go for it and use as many as you want. In this case, I'm using a Mac Mini with 32 gigs of RAM, so it's going pretty well. It's very good. Now, what if we want to do something a little bit more? What if we want to connect to, for example, OpenAI, ChatGPT, or Grok, or Anthropic, or Gemini, or any other of these LLMs available online? You can also do it here and connect it there. To do that, we use something called LLM, which is basically like a proxy that allows you to connect OpenWebUI with as many LLMs as you want. LLM has OpenAI, basically a ChatGPT API interface, and from there, it will proxy and will allow you to connect to as many models as you want. The easiest way to get it running here is we just go to the Git repository and we clone it locally. Once we have that clone, change to a directory, and we need to create an environment file. This is just to give us access to LLM. Vim.m, this is the file. You can also use Nano, any editor you want. I like Vim. And here we need to add 2 entries. One is called LLM master key, and it has to start with SK hyphen. And from here, just to create any key you want. I have here like a password generator, and you can just put this one here. And then we need another key, which is called LLM salt key. And again, the same format, SK hyphen, and we put here any other password that we generate. And that's it. We save this file and we're good to go. So what we need to do now is to run Docker Compose on the LLM. Here we can see now that in Docker we have our OpenWebUI running, but also we have LLM and all the different services that it uses. And in this case, it is using the port 4000. So what we need to do is to go to localhost 4000. When we get there, what we have here is the API documentation, so we just can explore it, but we don't really need that. What we need is to click here in the LLM admin panel. And when we get there, we need to put username admin, and here for the password, remember the environment file that we created before? So this key here, the master key, copy that, and you use that as the password. Now that we have this set up, what we need to do is to create the API keys for OpenAI or Grok or whatever you want to use. In this case, I'm gonna go and create one at OpenAI. If you create an account OpenAI and you have to add your details and credit card and all that stuff, once you do that, basically you get here to the dashboard, and it's a platform openai.com, and there is this API keys. So if I click here, create a new secret key, I just give it a name, for example, LLM, default project, all permissions, create secret key. And here is the key. Once you copy it here, it's going to disappear. So make sure that you copy it somewhere safe. Now that we have our OpenAI API key created, we go to models, add a model, and from here we say provider. You can see there is tons of providers here you can use. In this case, we're going to use OpenAI. And here we can say which models we want to use. There are tons of them. Of course, in this case, some of them are going to cost you more money, so you have to be careful with that. Let's get 4O. Here you see OpenAI organization ID, and in order to access that, in the OpenAI portal, you go to General, and here you have your organization ID. Paste that, and also you will use your API key that we created before and put it here. There is a button here, test connect. Okay, you exceeded your current quota. Fine. Okay, I'm gonna go here now and pay for it. So we need to add here some credit. In this case, I'm just gonna add $10. Continue. And now I have some credit. So let's give it a try again here. And yay, connection successful. And now here we have a model added into our interface. So what we can do now is to create a virtual key. So here we say, okay, it's owned by me. And the key name, I just create OpenAI models. I just select all team models, meaning that you can actually create very different virtual keys for specific models. So you can have different groups. Let's say you have this in an organization and you want to give that access to those models only to certain people, to certain groups. You can do that here. In this case, just all teams and models. You have a lot more settings here you can set up, like for example, limited on budget. It will calculate that for you, and many other things that are very useful if you have this share with other people, you want to constrain cost. But for now, we're just going to create this key. And here we have, so now if I copy this key, what I need to do now is to go to our Open Web UI interface and click on admin panel. We click on settings, we can click on connections. And here, for example, we have a connection to OpenAI. Well, what we do there, instead of OpenAI, we can just put localhost 4000, which is our light LLM. We get the API key that we got before in our virtual key, and we can click here and verify connection. Okay, this is failing, and why? Well, the reason is because Open Web UI that we are running now, it's running as a Docker container because we use Docker Compose to run it. So what happens is that inside as a container, it needs internally, when we pass this parameter, it needs to access the host computer, the one we are running in our machine. And in order to access that, we cannot use the local host, otherwise it will try to access itself. And to do that, we need to use host docker internal. This is the one which accesses our host machine. Now, as we try, we see server connection verified. That's basically the reason. If you run into these issues when using Docker Compose, that's what is happening. So I save this, and now we have this working here. Now let's open a new chat, and here we have GPT-4o is available for us, and you can see our other local models that I already installed using Ollama, and this one has a little icon here which shows external, meaning that this is an external service. It doesn't really know Open Web UI that is connecting to OpenAI, but it's using Light LLM, which has the same OpenAI API, and that's why it's able to connect to it. So let's ask a question. Are you ChatGPT? Yes, and ChatGPT, a language model. Yeah, so we are actually connecting to it. Let's do something a little bit more intensive. Explain how an LLM works. And here we have a proper OpenAI ChatGPT response that we will expect. Now, be careful here. All this that I'm doing is costing me money. If I go back to OpenAI, I can see here all the requests. So this was the other day probably was playing with it. But here we have today, I'm recording this May 8th. And you can see already there has been some money spent on these calls. So every call you make to the API, you're going to pay money. Am I going to spend less than my monthly subscription? I don't know. We are going to talk about that later in another video to see how we can actually probably save money in our usage of these services. With Grok, it's basically the same. You just go here, API keys, you create a new API with Grok, and you put that in Light LLM, and you have Grok as well. You can have Anthropic, you can have Gemini, you can have all of them. But now there is one more thing I want to show you, and it's a website called OpenRouter. And this one allows you to connect, very similar to Light LLM, to tons and tons of models. You can pay and put some money in there. It's like a credit system, and then depending on the model, some of them are more expensive, some of them are free. And basically the process is the same. So what we need to do is create an account, we go to settings, and then we go to API keys. And here we just create an API key. So give it a name, Open Web UI. Credit limit, let's put a credit limit of 5 just to be safe. Create, and here is, this is the API key. So now we get back to our admin panel, And in connections, here's where we have our light LLM. So we click on this plus here, and we have here the key. And here we have the Open Router endpoint. Let's check, verify the connection. Yeah, connection verify. We save. Okay. Now, if we open a new chat window, we can see here that look at the list. Look at that. It's massive. It's gigantic. Of course, we can just filter these. We don't need to access to all of these models. It's just as an example for you to see. So yeah, we have our local models here that we installed. And we also have the ones in a light LLM. But here, basically, you access to a huge amount of models. If we go here to Open Router and we click here on models, then here we can say, okay, I want only free models, for example. Look at that. These all here are all free. So if I go back here to Open Web UI and search for this one, 5.4, here we are, reasoning free. Okay, click on that. Why is Mars color red? And here we have it. This is actually using Open Router and accessing this model for free. And look at that, it's a massive response that is giving, super fast, and this is all free. And we get all this, and we can interface this programmatically as well, because Open Router is using OpenAI API interface. So you can write your Python or Golang, any script you want, and interface with it and do it programmatically. You don't need Open Web UI if you want. But this is great. So here we can have tons of models available for us for any purpose. And that's it for now. Now, Open Web UI allows you a huge amount of configuration. We are going to go deep into that in another video to see you can put great scripts, pipe stuff. You can do a lot of things with it. You can have many more models in there. It's extremely powerful. You can even set it up, for example, in a virtual private server and have it not in your home, but it's somewhere, and you can run it directly and give access to some people if you want. So basically, OpenWebUI allows you to run all these models, have your own basically ChatGPT at home and running locally private. Your data is not shared with anyone. And if you want to share it, well, as you see, you can have access to all these other LLMs, some of them for free, some others payment, but it's actually cheap. And that's the other video I want to go through it, because we might save money depending on the usage that you give it. You might save some money by going through the API using that plan instead of paying the monthly subscription. So if you put them all together, for example, if you pay OpenAI, you pay Grok, you pay Perplexity, all of these ones, they all have a monthly subscription. It's usually around $20, $30 or something like that. If you put all that together, it's a lot of money at the end of the month. But if you use the API, you only pay for that usage. So let's say if you use, for example, you can use all of them and maybe pay at the end of the month the same 20 or 30, but you are sharing that usage through all of them, and each of them have a better or worse depending on the task that you want to do. So that's something you need to be taking into consideration. And yeah, I'm gonna make a video about that. Let me know in the comments if you are using Open Web UI already in your home for your own research. And remember that there is a blog post related to this video. So check the blog. Every video has a post there where all the information I'm sharing here is also there. So you can just learn it from there. Thank you for watching.